Hi, and welcome to your 5-step guide to managing fear and moving forward. We all get so stuck with emotions like fear that can be so crippling and stop us from obtaining what we want in life, or we get started and then we don't finish what we're doing, or we procrastinate, or there's so many reasons that fear stops us living our potential. So my name is Mindy Taliente and I'm the founder of Wellness for Life. And in so many contexts all over the world, we've helped people to manage fears, anxieties, stress in their work context, in their family and personal life context. So before we get on to talking about fear, I thought I'd tell you what inspired me to do this free course before your skeptical mind takes over and wonders what I want from you. Well, actually, it's not. I've had so many fears in my life that one of them, for example, I'll give you, is that I used to have a fear of losing my family, that something tragic would happen to them. And you know what was even worse was that there was no reason to have this fear. It didn't come from a past experience. It didn't come from a traumatic event or anything that happened in my family. So it was even more puzzling as to why I had this fear. And what would happen as a cause of this fear was I'd get really overprotective with my children or my husband. And every time they went out and I wasn't with them, I'd be paranoid that something was going to happen to them. So I'd ask loads of questions. Where are you going? What are you doing? What time are you going to be back? And my children, for instance, would just think I was a really strict mum. And it wasn't that. We'd come into tension and arguments because of it, but it wasn't that. It's because it was underlying fear that I had and didn't really know the origins of. So that's why we put this together for you. And that's only one example. There are so many examples in different contexts how fear can sabotage our life. So let's start with an introduction to fear. We can't get onto our 5-step guide unless we really have a good understanding of what fear is. So what's really important to know about fear is that it is a very natural, normal, and chemical response in the brain to detect threat and danger. In other words, our brains are wired to detect the negative. So that's a natural occurrence. And why this happened is because way back when, in the prehistoric days when cavemen were going out to search for food and hunt, they needed to be alerted of when predators were oncoming and going to eat them up and they would be dead. So we wouldn't necessarily have had the human race that existed till today unless that chemical response was there to preserve human race and have that survival instinct. The problem is these days that we aren't in life-threatening situations necessarily like the cavemen were back in the day, but our bodies still respond in the same way. We perceive threat and danger when in reality it might not be threat and danger. However, the impact that it has on our nervous systems, which when that happens, we go into the fight, flight, freeze response, which is the stress response of the nervous system, then has a negative impact on our body. And especially if we're constantly in that mode, it depletes us of amino acids and we can't build protein in the body and then we get sick. So fear is a great emotion to have to keep us alive, but it's also quite harmful if it's out of balance. So how do we harness fear to break through limitations and to really thrive and live our potential? Let's go to step one. Step one is identify your fear or fears. If we don't know what our fears are, how can we master them? So often, fear is deeply ingrained in us, often subconsciously, and we're not even aware that fear is directing or influencing our behaviors, our attitudes, our interactions, the relationships we have with others. So it's really important to nail down what your fears are. This takes a few moments maybe to sit down and just think about what it is that sabotages you moving forward or stops you doing the things you want to do in life. So there are so many different types of fear. There's fear of failure, that's a common one. Fear of success, fear of poverty, fear of death, fear of growing old, fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of criticism, fear of judgment, fear of losing loved ones. So the fears, there's so many of them and they might work hand in hand and be quite subtle how they impact our lives. So the first step is to really understand what fears you are dealing with. because once you identify them, you are able to then manage them and recognize them when they show up in your life. Step 2, identify the origins of your fears. We all know that fears come from somewhere, but we don't necessarily know where. I like to use the analogy. So in the garden, when weeds are growing, if we just cut the weed from the top of the grass and the surface of the earth, then in no time that weed is going to grow again. So what we have to do is pull the weed out from the root, and the chances are the weed will not grow again. It's exactly the same with our fears. If we can't identify the origins or roots of our fears, the chances are we're going to do a breathing exercise or some other exercise that will work for a little while, but then your fears are going to remanifest and come back. So it's really important to get to the root cause. So this could be, for instance, a traumatic event that has happened in the past. Potentially that was in your childhood, or there was a traumatic event in your family that has ignited and given way to a fear that is quite deeply ingrained in you. Or it's a past experience. So maybe there was another experience that happened a few weeks ago, a few months ago, a couple of years ago, that has left an impact on you and triggers the fear, because the fear is often ignited or triggered by negative events or negative thoughts, as we explained earlier. So we need to look for patterns with our fears when they surface. Where did they originate from? If it's in the past, why are we letting the past experiences sabotage our present and our future? Because the past is in the past. It's already happened. It can't actually impact your present and your future unless you allow it to. We also have to understand that fears originate from beliefs, and oftentimes the beliefs are not necessarily ours. They don't serve us. They're beliefs that we've inherited from our parents, from institutions, from influential people in our life, and they don't serve us moving forward. For instance, let's give you an example. Oh, you can't take a risk and leave your day-to-day job to set up a business because you need a stable income every month, a salary to support your family. Maybe you grew up with a belief like that, but maybe it's not the belief that is going to define your future, and you might be more willing to take risks than the fear is allowing you to do. So always work out the origins of your beliefs to be able to identify what is sabotaging you, creating a future that gives you what you want and helps you to live your potential and access so much joy. Step number 3, shift your mindset around fear. We often see fear as a negative or something bad that stops us from doing something. Instead of looking at fear as a negative, why don't you ask yourself, what is this particular fear teaching me about myself? What's it teaching me about the relationships I have? What's it teaching me about the work that I do? What's it teaching me about anything? Because the fear is often masking a lot of growth, a lot of potential, all our strengths are hiding dormant underneath the fear. So when we just unearth what the fear is teaching us and look at what's underneath, we can often break through that fear and move forward in our lives. Now, we perceive fear to be a bad thing. It's only our perception of things that can be harmful or bad or stop us moving forward. It's only when we perceive something to be negative or harmful that it can actually have that impact on us. If we reframe what fear is, really, I like the acronym FEAR, false expectations appearing real. It's just expectations that we have set out of a situation, of ourselves, of our relationships, that aren't real and don't correspond to reality, that actually create the blockage and stop us moving forward. So when we reframe that and we look at it as what it is rather than what we think it is, that can help us move forward and break through any blockages that are stopping us. Step number 4, challenge your fears. Ask for the evidence. Ask yourself for the evidence that supports why a fear is stopping you do X, Y, or Z. We have to look underneath why. What is it that's happening? Where is your evidence? Is this real? Is this exaggerated? Is this something I've made up? is it actually a reality? No, challenge it every time, because by challenging it, you might get to the bottom of it and realize actually there's no evidence to support this. So there's no need to be fearful about whatever it is that we're fearful of. And then there is also knowledge. Knowledge is an antidote to fear. So, for instance, if you are looking to start something, do something, and you're a bit fearful of it, then go and educate yourself about whatever it is that you want to do or learn about or embark upon. Because when we don't have enough information about something, that's when the fear starts to set in. But once we're equipped with knowing everything about a subject, a topic, whatever it is we want to do, then we are less likely to be sabotaged by fear and more likely to embark upon what it is we want to do, paving that way to live our potential and a life of joy and freedom. You can truly manage fear when you go to it or get with it, as I like to say. You can tackle it head on or make slow, progressive steps towards it, but going there to the fearful place will help you to master it. And we must go there and not run away from it, because running away from it just makes it worse. I like to use the analogy of quicksand. How many of you know how to get out of quicksand? If in the unlikely event you were ever to find yourself in that situation, how do you survive quicksand? There are so many different answers that I get to this one. Usually it's, oh, we just try and climb out of it, or we stay still. But actually, the way to get out of quicksand is to lie on your back, or try your best to lie on your back and roll out of it. You've got to get with the quicksand. It's exactly the same with the sea. We don't try and swim against a wave or the tide if we find ourselves drowning. We actually lie along with the wave and let the wave carry us out. Exactly the same thing when it comes to fear. We have to get with the fear in order to master it. And to do this, there is a great exercise that I love, and I do this myself quite often. It's the so what exercise. So usually when we are presented with a fear or a thought that stops us doing something, we could say, so what? So I'll give you an example. I can't go swimming today because the water's really cold and I'll get a cold. So what? Well, if I get a cold, I'll be lying in bed sick and I won't be able to do my work. So what? Well, if I don't do my work, then I'll be behind and I'll have to catch up on Monday. So what? Well, then if I catch up on Monday, then it's going to put me back and I won't be able to do the things I really want to do. So what? Well, if I can't do the things I want to do, I might not be able to go out for that meal I really wanted to go out with my friend. So what? And on it goes. Keep going, keep going, keep going, because the so what will just show you that actually there is no reason not to do something. We make those reasons up in our head, and we can come up with many, I can assure you, but just challenge yourself. So what? And that brings us to step number 5. Stay present. Fear is often linked to events that haven't transpired yet, that are connected to the future. Fears, anxieties, stresses, we invest so much into things that have not happened and are most likely not going to happen. We just project that and we think in our head that that is a reality that will eventuate, when it often doesn't. So staying present can really help you to focus in on the moment, on the task at hand, on what you are doing, so you are likely to get to where you need to be. And so one of the best things to do to stay present is a mindfulness exercise. You can Google search mindfulness. You can have a look at Insight Timer, the app. There's so many mindfulness exercises that you can practice regularly. And the more you practice them, the more you are going to be able to do this automatically. Stay present. The minute a fear raises its ugly head to say, oh, what if, you know, to bring yourself into the present moment by doing a simple exercise, which I'm going to run you through now. And it doesn't take long. You can let me know how you feel having done this exercise. So simple. So what we do is we just sit up nice and straight with a nice straight spine, and we uncross our arms and uncross our legs, feet flat on the floor. You can also do this exercise lying down if you prefer, or sitting up against a wall. And all I'm going to ask you to do is close your eyes. Just take some breaths and just notice your breathing. Notice your inhale and notice your exhale. There's nothing to judge, just notice what's happening. Is your inhale longer than your exhale? Or is the exhalation longer than the inhalation? Or are they about the same? Now notice when you inhale, can you notice where the breath is going to? Is it your head, your chest? Do you feel it in your belly? Where can you feel that breath as it goes into your body? And when you breathe out, can you feel where that breath is leaving your body from? Does it come out just through your nose, or can you feel it leave your chest or your stomach? Just observe it. And when you breathe in, can you feel a temperature at the base of your nostrils with the inhalation? Does it feel warm? Does it feel cold? Is it neutral? And when you exhale, can you feel a temperature associated with that exhalation? Does it feel warm, cold, or neutral? And how do they compare? How does your inhalation compare with your exhalation in terms of temperature? And then just notice how long you're breathing in for and how long you're breathing out for now compared to the beginning when we started the exercise. And then when you're ready, take a few deep breaths. And then slowly open your eyes. How do you feel? Did that make you feel present? Did you find your mind running around and not being able to focus? Or were you completely in the moment listening to the instructions and trying to understand your breath? It only took a few minutes and we were able to bring our mind into one place. And anytime that fear raises its head, do a practice like this, just focus on your breath. It only takes a couple of minutes to bring your mind to the present moment, where you can then focus on what needs to be done without letting your fears and worries of the future impact what you do. Which brings us to the end of our guide. I hope that's been helpful for you. Just remember, it takes 4 C's. Commencement. You have to start somewhere. We need to go and just take that initial step. Otherwise, we can keep going around in circles, or worse still, do nothing about facing our fears. Number 2, it takes commitment. We have to have commitment and really stick to doing these practices, or sticking to what we want to do to overcome fear every day. Commitment is what will get you started. And then we have consistency. Consistency is required. You need to do it every single day or as often as you can. Keep going, because it creates a habit and a pattern and starts to become ingrained in you, and it becomes normal. And all of this obviously takes courage. Without courage, we will not be able to be in control of our fear, but they will swallow us up and sabotage everything that we want to do in life and stop us from living our best life. So in order to get courage, we need to reach out to trusted individuals, reach out to communities, reach out, gain the support to get you started on this journey of facing your fears. Finally, if fears become so overwhelming and sabotage other parts of your mental well-being, your emotional well-being, your social health, and your physical health, please do reach out and contact professional healthcare and mental health specialists who are able to support you in the right way. I hope you've gained something out of our 5-step guide to managing your fear and moving forward. And we're always open to hearing from you and reaching out to us. So please do stay in touch, keep in contact, and let us know how you got on.